The big event is coming up next weekend, and this is something that you don't want to miss. Stay tuned. Well, welcome to this week's edition of NoteSchool TV, and we are glad to have you today. We have a great guest. This is episode 263, so we're starting on our 6th year of coming direct to you guys every Wednesday at 11:05. So we are glad to have you and looking forward to another year and keeping you up to date with what's going on at NoteSchool. So today, some of you may recognize this guy that is our guest. He is a long-term NoteSchool member, and he helps NoteSchool out with some consulting as well. I want to bring you my friend, great guy, Mr. Joe LaCount.
Thanks, Joe. Glad to be
Hey,
here.
Joe.
How you doing?
Hey, Joe. We're not just your average Joes.
That's right. Absolutely.
All right. So, Joe, it's great to have you, and we are just a little over a week away, about 9 days away from Note Expo, and we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. But Joe, so for those folks that don't know you, just
Sure.
give us a little background on what you've done and where you are, and then we'll talk a little bit about what you've some of your NoteSchool accomplishments, and then kind of what you're doing now. So yeah, let's just
Sure.
get started.
Oh, sounds good. I mean, I got involved in real estate as a landlord way back in 1985. Which, well, geez, when you think about it, 40 years ago, bought my first uh, uh, landlord property, $100 down, and assumed a 18.5% mortgage, and and it cash flowed, and so my real estate career kicked off. And I would say over the years, I worked in corporate America, so I moved around. So I had, places in Vegas and in the Minneapolis area, and Indiana and Florida. Wherever I moved, I had all of these, things going on. And then I would say probably about 12, 13 years ago, um, kind of took a look and said, you know what, I'm buying myself another job by being this landlord, especially not being near my properties where I could normally do the work myself and kind of save a little bit of money, and really started looking into notes, and I would say never looked back since. So it's been 12 13 years now that been associated with NoteSchool, and it's been a great ride.
It has, yeah. Like you said, you've traveled around the world, had a big career with a big company,
Yep.
and I know you wouldn't trade that for anything in the world, right?
Nope, nope. Great experience. I mean, it helped me, and actually, I have my own consulting company where I do what I did for corporate America. I just do it for other companies, around the globe.
So, what has been your since you've been and by the way, this will be our 14th year for
Hmm.
Note Expo, our 14th anniversary. And again, we'll talk a little more about that in just a few minutes, but I just want to remind everybody while it was top of my mind, right? And so how have you seen things change over the past 14 or so years, 13, 14 years in the business, the real estate business, and the note business? What do you see as being the biggest changes that you've seen?
Well, other than my changes, I would say going from the physical real estate to notes, that to me was a pretty significant change. But just even in the industry, I would say when I first started to buy some of the notes, we were looking at rental properties, 50, 60, $70,000. Um, and that was, I would say, in the
Mhm.
2016, 17, and your note, your take home from your note was about $300, 350, maybe 400.
Yeah.
And now when I take a look and I'm purchasing notes, in fact, I just purchased three or four of them in the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks or so.
Mhm.
It's just the I would say the caliber of the notes that we're seeing now are. I'm not downplaying because I still have a lot of the notes still in
Mhm.
my portfolio, but just I would say the quality of the notes are really, really great. Not that they weren't back then, but the
It's different.
payouts are different. I can remember I had a couple of notes and it's saying, there's no way they're going to default because, if rent was 700, their mortgage was 500 or 300, so they'd be absolutely, ludicrous for them to default. Well, post COVID, expenses for, being a landlord and,
Every
and things like that. Oh my God, it's gone up 60, 70%, and rent has gone up what, 20, 30%
20, yep,
maybe?
that's right,
You know,
maybe.
so we've just seen that flip flop. And people our age, the silver tsunami,
Mhm.
taking a look at, those landlords that want to retire, just creates another opportunity for us to, be creative in helping, landlords find another exit strategy in,
Sure.
creating good notes. So the opportunities I see are just almost limitless.
You're right, and if we kinda go back and we look at what you said back 13, 14 years ago, we were coming out of the Great Recession, right?
Oh yeah.
And properties had gone way down.
Yep.
We were right kind of in the middle of the big non-performing swing, and literally you could buy a non-performing note for about 25%, well, less than that, 15 to
Yeah.
25% of the current value.
Yep.
And so there was a lot going on there. And then as things happen and the market starts to cycle and it continues through, and kind of that phase, that non-performing phase went out of, came out.
Yep.
And then smooth sailing as far as the non-performing. And then we get into a situation where it was great to have rentals. It was
Yeah.
great to have rentals in 15, 16, 17,
Oh
18,
yeah.
19, 20,
Yeah.
And then what we found, like you said, is that we've seen the expenses just skyrocket. And the expenses are,
Mhm.
insurance and taxes. And, the tax collectors for each county, kind of said, oh, wow, look, these properties have gone up during COVID.
Mhm.
And now we can kind of get the values up so we can collect more taxes. But now that's stabilized, so everything, expenses to fix something, and it's
Yeah.
just all been crazy. And Joe, we look at this. I was on the phone with a couple of guys the other day, and both of them had rental properties. One guy had 10, one guy had 12. They were in the Ohio area.
Mhm.
And I asked him, I said, well, how many properties do you guys have? Or you have. And the one guy, he says, well, I've got 12. No, he said, I've got 10. And I said, what do you calculate your monthly cash flow being all in? And again, he had bought these, in 16, 17, 18, right in there.
Mhm.
And he said, well, after I pay my mortgage payment, right, I've got
Yeah.
about $250 left a month times 10. So
Ooh.
that's $2,500. But Joe, think about that. He's got 10 properties. They're at least worth 150 to $200,000.
Yeah.
So he's got $1.5 million to $2 million. I mean, he's using some leverage on that, but that's a lot of money to have invested to get on a good month. If nothing goes wrong with any of those properties, then he's cleared $2,500, which is not a whole lot.
No, I mean, you
Put a
think
roof
about
on
that.
one of them and you've blown the whole year.
Exactly. I mean, the amount of trapped equity due to the appreciation from, 2020 through 2025 now. I mean, that's the to me is the beauty of the notes. And when to your point, Joe, when you start talking to landlords and start to talk to them and ask them about their exit strategy, especially the ones that thought that they were building this kind of nest egg to be able to give to their kids, and talk to a lot of landlords, and it's like, kids don't want it. They want the money. They don't want they one landlord said, my kid said, "We seeing how hard mom and dad worked. We don't want to work that hard."
And I totally get that, and I wouldn't want to leave it to them, right? I mean,
Yeah.
look at my kids; they wouldn't have any idea how to navigate that. And you're right; they saw you work Saturdays when people moved
Yep.
out, or fixing plumbing, whatever it is. It's never
Holidays,
hands off.
birthdays.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So we've inside of our membership, Joe, we've been working for the last month on a working group with some of the folks that are really wanting to focus on this, showing landlords that there is another way
Yeah.
to operate a business or invest their money they have in those rentals. And what we found is that most of these folks have owned the properties for many years. They've
Yep.
depreciated them down to where their cost basis is almost nothing, right?
Yep.
And the property that they paid $75,000 or $100,000 for 7, 8, 9 years ago is now worth $250,000, and they've got almost maybe $150,000 in equity in those property, and it's totally tied up.
Yeah.
And if you went out and tried to borrow against the properties to get some of that money out, then you wouldn't
Yep.
be able. Then you wouldn't, you just make the payment on the loan, and it really wouldn't have accomplished what you wanted to accomplish. So there's the tax hacks, and there's the lifestyle change that we see
Yep.
as well as we go through this. But through this working group, we really have, yeah. I mean, I've learned a lot that because I thought
Yeah.
I don't want to say I thought I knew it all, but I thought I had all the answers. And Joe has been, you've been one of the ones that Joe has an engineering background, right? I don't.
Yep.
So Joe is really, he's the thinker saying, okay, here's those other little pieces. And you've brought an amazing amount to the table with that, Joe. So talk about a little bit of that as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my whole, background is in process improvement,
Mhm.
continuous improvement, taking a look at, strategy deployment. So, as we started working through, a lot of the processes, it's just, for me, my attention to detail, I love it. Sometimes it frustrates the heck out of other people because you ask the question, it's like, well, everybody knows that. Well, I don't know that, so I believe I'm part of everybody. So, so
Right.
we need to take a look at it, because once you have a process down and people start following that process, now you can start asking questions about what's working, what's not working. Because there's nuances between the process as well as the person that's doing the process. So the more that we can flesh out, and the more we can we call it mistake proofing. Some people will call it idiot proofing, but I don't like that phrase because I don't
Yeah.
think anybody's an idiot. So we really take a look at mistake proofing and say, what's our best opportunity for success in you know in engaging with either landlords and or realtors
Mhm.
that potentially might have a great portfolio of people. I mean, when you think about a realtor, their portfolio is not real estate, it's contacts, it's people,
Yeah.
either people that they bought or sold. And so it's those connections, and how do you leverage that, kind of that warm that warm connection that they have to potential, buyers and sellers.
Yeah. One of the things that we're going to talk about at Note Expo this year is, you kind of ask people what their assets are, and they're, your mind goes right to, well, I own 5 houses, I own this,
Yep.
but that's really not all of your assets, right? Your
No.
assets could be your knowledge. They could
Absolutely.
be your family, they could be the contacts and the people you
Yep.
know, And
Your
those really,
experiences.
yeah,
Yeah.
your experiences. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, you bring a lot of the different things to the table. And to your point, Joe, I think everybody thinks, oh, capital. I'm bringing capital, but I mean, think about resource of time.
Yes.
As you're looking for investors, a lot of potential passive investors, they have the time. They might even have part of the knowledge, but guess what? They don't have that experience. They don't have they might not even have the time. It's like, I don't want to buy another job.
Hmm.
Just tell me how I can passively invest in a note that's backed by real estate. And
Yeah.
those are some great conversations because you're always looking for the pain point of,
Hmm.
okay, why wouldn't you invest in real estate or notes or the stock market, whatever.
Right.
But it's finding out where people are, and then doing some education. People might say it's selling, but no, it's really education because you're
Yeah.
looking for that fit for, is this really a fit? Not only for me, but for you as
Hmm.
well.
And a couple of things that we're really finding out as we have more of our folks in Note School that are talking to people, and a couple of things that about that are landlords, right?
Yeah,
They've owned these properties a lot of years. They're ready to, they've that's their life, right? And
yeah,
it is having that conversation with them that there's something else out there. Most
yeah,
people think that, well, a lot of folk, not most people, but a lot of people today think it's just a one and done. I'm going to pitch Joe LaCount, and he's either going to be in, selling his house, or he's not. And that's not the way that it works.
no,
It's having that conversation, because we know, Joe, that two of the things that a landlord will say if they become the bank, and that's what we're talking about, is them becoming a
yeah,
bank, is one, well, I won't own the property anymore. And
hmm,
two, I won't get my appreciation, and then I won't get to depreciate it.
yeah,
And I always, so we'll start with the first one. Remember, when you're depreciating the value of a house, the IRS lets you do that over 27 and a half years.
yep,
That ain't free, because if you
no,
then sell it, what they giveth, they want back. So you have to pay
absolutely,
your depreciation recapture.
yep,
And most of the rentals that are out there, are probably in that what, 150 to $300,000 range, I'd say.
yeah,
And a lot of them are older houses, and the appreciation, they're not going to go up 5% a year for the next,
right,
so if you're getting 2.5 times in a monthly payment, what you would net over rentals, that you're getting your freaking you're getting your appreciation every time you get a monthly
absolutely,
payment, right? Yeah.
yeah. Well, not only that, but one of the things I talk to them about is, what can you do with your time? What are the things that you haven't been able to get to that you would love to get to?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a trip, maybe it's
Mhm.
seeing the grandkids, maybe it's whatever it is. But at that point in time, you now have options.
Mhm.
And so you start painting a lifestyle of, hey, remember weekends when you're either doing some drywall or you're doing some painting and
Mhm.
stuff like. You don't have to worry about that. You have to go, you know, either take a look at your bank statement or go to the mailbox and pick up your check.
That's it. And Joe, I was in Memphis here back in doing a presentation for a group back in May, I think it was late May. And I did the presentation. And this is exactly what I talked about. And this gentleman and his wife came up to me afterwards and said, it was either 15 or 18 properties. They managed them themselves. He was in his mid 70s, and I'm not sure how old she was, but they were just, he said, Joe, I'm in. I'm coming to a 2-day class. I'm going to learn how to do this. And
Yeah,
he had a picture of his on his phone of a red Porsche Carrera, right?
there you go.
911. That's what I really want. And I just want to be able to take that lady right there and let's do some traveling, because we've never been able to
Absolutely.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I grew up, Joe, hearing time is money.
yeah,
I can tell you that as you get a little older, time is a heck of a lot more valuable than money.
It really is. Money affords you some of the experiences that, if you didn't have it, obviously you couldn't do those
Right.
things. But I mean, the beauty is now I think landlords are starting to take a look and saying, how do I start cashing in on all of the effort? Because you think about the property appreciation, but you think about their appreciation from the standpoint of how much knowledge they've gained, dealing with people, whether it's other, like rental companies, HVAC, plumbing, you name it.
Every-
So now you start to take a look and say, hey, you know what? Now rather than doing all that stuff, you can take out your 911 and go for a ride, or you can visit the grandkids, or spend your time doing something philanthropic if you want, give back to the
yeah,
community.
yeah. Joe, it is, we look at that, and it is just having those options, which is totally
Yeah,
amazing. So, Joe, we'll wrap up here. Um, next week we'll be converging on
Dallas.
Dallas Fort Worth, right?
Yep,
And
yep,
next Friday morning at about 9 o'clock, we will start Note Expo, and this is an event for anybody in the industry. You don't have to be a
yeah,
Note School member. You haven't had to have attended a Note School class. This is a true note industry event, and we truly believe, and we've been voted for the last 6 years as the best industry. Note Expo has been the best
yeah,
industry event. And so it's not only about the speakers that we have there that are
yeah.
bringing the latest, what we're doing there, the vendors, all the vendors that you need to do the business are there. What's networking? What's your favorite part of all that, Joe?
It's hard to narrow down because, for me, Node Expo is kind of my almost strategic planning cycle kickoff
Mhm.
for 2026. So I love the industry updates. What are we looking at for the remainder of 2025? What do we look like, going into 2026? Just meeting with other like-minded note investors and finding out, what are they doing. One of the beauties is, I started off doing a wealth building strategy in my HSA, my IRAs,
Yes.
and things like that. And now, I've switched that, because my lifestyle has changed, and so I was taking a look at, doing more, income generation, passive income on a monthly basis. So just talking with like-minded people and saying, hey, what kind of strategies are you looking at? What are you doing now? What are you looking at in the future? And obviously meeting some of the vendors and talking with them, their servicers. There's a lot of note industry professionals that you can pick up a lot of different things from. So I don't know that there's one single thing. I'm looking
I know.
forward to the whole entire experience because it's one of those, don't miss it if at all possible. Because you're just immersed with people that are like-minded, and there's going to be a lot of people asking questions. People will come up and ask me questions, and it just makes me think about, okay, how far did I come along and how many people helped me along the way. And it's that nurturing environment that that kind of that exudes, helping each other.
Mhm.
So yeah,
We call that a go giver, Joe. And
absolutely.
you'll meet a lot of go givers at that from the Note School family, but then from everybody else in the industry that will be there as well. So November 7th and 8th, next Friday and Saturday, it'll be an amazing event. The lunches, the camaraderie and the networking at lunches, and the ice cream social, and the
Yep.
cocktail party on Friday evening. All of
Yeah.
those things are just part of that networking, and we'd love to have you there.
Yeah.
And we'll put a link to that on the on here on the back end. But just go to Note School or NoteExpo.com, and it will pop up and show you all the details about what that looks like. So, Joe, any final thoughts?
If you can make it to Dallas, be there. Like I said, it's a great time. It's a great informational. Like I said, for me, it kicks off my planning cycle for
Absolutely.
2026 and gets me kind of geared up for. I'm not a big New Year's resolutioner, but get
Yeah.
that planning cycle down, get the information, learn some new strategies from people that maybe you haven't talked to before, and just use those. And even if you're not ready for that strategy, just learning it, put it in your portfolio for when it comes to fruition.
Absolutely. Joe, thank you for being on here today. It is always a treat. Joe is my buddy. Excuse me,
Bless
is my
you.
buddy, and we always have a good time. We look forward to
Yep.
seeing you at Note Expo next week, if you can make it. If not, and you want to know more about what we do at Note School, simply go to noteschool.com/TV. Again, noteschool.com/TV. Thank you, Joe, for being our guest today, and we will see you all same place, same time next week. Have a good week.